The Order of Light presents We Are the Disclosure, episode 23. With our guest, Tiffany White, as we explore how to stay in tune in a world that's out of tune. Now is the time for those with experiences to speak. We are not waiting for the disclosure. We are the disclosure. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's episode will be Josh Mayoda's final episode with We Are the Disclosure. After 23 amazing episodes of Disclosure, Josh is moving on to start up his own channel, which is Lost Through the Rabbit Hole with Josh Mayoda, as he will be covering all sorts of the paranormal phenomena. Make sure that you go subscribe to his page. You can find a link in the description, and I want to thank him for all of his love and support, and I wish him the best on his journey. So go check that out, and everyone go show your love and support.
Hello everyone, all of you wonderful beings of light. Welcome back to the channel. We have a great guest today, my cousin, Tiffany White, sage woman, or should I say Reverend White. Let's call it like it is. How's it going, Tiffany? So happy that you're here with Josh and I and everyone that's returning to the channel. Yeah. Welcome to the channel. Yeah, it's going to be a great time. Now, just to fill everyone in a little bit, so Tiffany had Josh and I on her channel, Goldilocks Production, which that information can be found in the description, and she interviewed Josh and I, and mostly it was me yapping as usual. But, you know, it was an awesome interview, and she was asking Josh and I so much about our backgrounds and what we're doing and etc. And it turns out that she has quite an interesting background as well. And after connecting to her after the interview and chatting with her, I realized, wow, she has a really incredible story. And today's topic and what we're going to be calling this, which right before we started this, I kind of just threw it out. It's how to stay in tune in a world that is out of tune. And so many people, whether they're starseeds, psychics, mediums, just these abilities and gifts. I don't like to put labels on things because most people have a little bit of everything. But I believe that most of us are born into this and that we are taught by the world to get out of it and to conform. So we're going to be going over her life story, who she is, what she's doing with Goldilocks Productions and the podcast and the YouTube channel and etc. And Tiffany, such a pleasure to have a cousin on the show. Love seeing two whites on the screen there. It's good stuff. And you got a lovely background behind you. It's looking real spiritual behind you. It's awesome. So welcome. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, etc.
I'm just me. That gets so hard to talk about yourself. You know, yeah. I am who I am. Okay. No.
I don't have a title. I don't have a label.
Whatever.
I'm just that sage woman that walks around burning sage all the time, and that's what people just call me because I'm out of my loony bin.
The crazy lady walking around the yard barefoot and just, you know, giving blessings all over. It's like, oh, talking to animals and nature, and yeah, it's that crazy lady.
It's a white thing. I mean, hey. So, so Tiffany. To get right into it, we don't need titles. We don't need anything. We're not mediums. We're not psychics. We're not astral projectors. We're not remote viewers. We're able to do all of these things, but we don't have a name for it because who we are cannot be defined in a single term. Done. And that goes for all of you that are watching. Remember that. You are more special than a title. You have more abilities and power than any title could ever possibly give you. understand. You don't. I could go around saying, "Hi, I'm Pastor Robert Earl White." I refuse to use that title because it disconnects us from one another, and it allows people to worship and idol us. And anyone that's in tune with the universe knows that's wrong. So, with that being said, your story when we were talking, absolutely incredible. Of when you were telling me about your childhood. And I just found that so interesting, and I really related. I grew up out in the country, kind of isolated from other human beings, from kids to play with. And your story really tugged at my heartstrings hard. So, Tiffany, if you could tell us about, where you were born and your situation and just growing up and some of the things you experienced and those moments throughout your life where you realized there was something else going on and you were still trying to figure this world out at the same time. I can't wait to, hear your experience with this.
Sure. So I'm from the Virginia Beach, Virginia area. And so that's where I was born, came into for the first 6 months. My biological dad, I say biological dad because I have a bonus dad too. So I'm very blessed to have 2 dads. Even though that blessing didn't come till later, I realized that, right? Because, Anyway, my biological dad was a Virginia Beach police officer involved in a shootout. Barely survived. I mean, he was lucky. He was lucky, right? He didn't get shot. Well, my mom was like, "That's it. You're finding another job because I'm not going to be a single mother with this baby." No, choose another career. So he chose to be a park ranger up in the mountains in Virginia, and so
where at in Virginia specifically?
I can't even. Dolphin Park. I forget what part of Virginia that is, but it's right near the mountains, the Allegheny Mountains. Anyways, that mountain range there, and so he went there. I was 6 months old when we moved there, and of course, park rangers get a cabin. You have a place to stay, and that's where I spent the first 3.5 to 4 years of my life, and I don't remember playing with other kids. I played with nature. That's just, how I grew up. And I remember all these different beings. I remember nature. I remember how it presented itself. It's just, and a lot of light. There was these 2 light guardians that have always been with me, these light beings. And they were very, very tall. Golden white light, but you couldn't really see a form. You couldn't see a shape. Did not see a face, but you could kind of see some sort of human form, but not really. And they're just very benevolent, very loving, high frequency, and they've just been with me my whole life. And I was like, okay, this is just how it is. Didn't question it or anything, and then, of course, all the nature beings, the tree beings, connecting with the fairies, with the flowers, with. And my dad had this interesting conversation. He had told me, he was filling in some of the blanks. We had an interesting conversation about a year before he crossed over. And he was filling in some blanks for me on my childhood. I was like, I better ask some questions, And so he was like, wow, he goes, you've always been so connected with nature. He goes, I'm surprised you're not living in the mountains somewhere. He was like, because that's just how you were. You were upset when we moved away from there. He was like, but I remember walking, he was just telling me that him, my mom, and I were walking on this trail. We did a lot of hiking trails. And then my mom and dad realized, they're like, well, where is she? They turned around. And I'm further down the road, they're like looking at me, and I'm bent down, and this is like a dirt kind of path, but there's a flower growing in the middle of this path, and I'm bending down, just looking at and talking to this flower as they're walking up. So I was looking at this flower, And my dad was like, oh, come on, just pick the flower and bring it with us. And I looked up and I was like, no. And they're like, what? And like, no, there's beings that live here. This is their home. I'm not going to pick this flower. I said to pick the flower's going to die. I knew this. Where did that come from? Come from conversing with it, knowing that it's, why do we don't pick the flowers? And he was like, oh, and I was like, come here, look. And I think I sent a picture of, I would always stop and smell all the flowers. Or there's another picture of my mother and I smelling flowers. And I was trying to show my mom, don't you see them? Don't you see the fairies? Don't you see the little beings that live on these flowers? And she's like, no. And I was like, oh, okay.
It reminds me of Norton Hears a Who, right?
Right.
And even the Grinch, that whole entire community on a single snowflake. And existentially, us human beings on this little dot of a speck of a planet in the universe, we're no different. And we are no different than what is on that flower. That's beautiful, Tiffany.
Yeah.
And you were aware of this, you were 3 or 4 years old, right?
Oh, yeah. I think at that point, I was like 2.5 to 3 years old. But all I can remember is just going on hikes with my dad. Give my mom some quiet time right here. Take her on a hike. So, it's what we did. And he would put me on, the backpack, the carrier, or sometimes in the front. And one of the pictures, we're on this mountain. We're on the top of the mountain in Dothet Park, looking down. And this is where we had it. And just an experience that I always remembered part of it. He filled the rest in for me. But he said, do you remember the experience we had with the eagle? And I was like, wait, tell me about this, because I've always, this eagle eye is always with me. Every time I meditate, if I close my eyes, and even in traveling, I always see this eye first, and trying to understand, what is this eye? And he was like, oh yeah, he goes, I had you in the front, we were looking down, and this eagle came really close to us, and flew by, and so the side view, then you see the one eye, right? And was looking at us, and he would circle around us like several times. And he was like, in that moment, I had a spiritual awakening that I wanted to become a minister.
Oh, wow.
And so my biological dad grew up Catholic, my mom, Southern Baptist, and they chose Lutheran when they got married and to go to the church for me, right? So he goes, I was either going to be a Catholic priest or a Lutheran minister, but I really leaned toward that. But he was like, God called me, is what he said. And he was like, did you have an experience too? And I was like, well, how old was I? And he goes, it doesn't matter. He goes, because you've always been different and connected. And he knew that. And I was like, well, that helps, because I've always seen this eagle eye, and now I know it's still guiding me. Like it's guided him, it's still
That's
guiding
awesome.
me. And I know, right? And I'm like, oh, that is so cool. And so that's what he did. And that was, I don't know, do we ever really know why people get divorced? But my mother didn't want to be a minister's wife. Whatever. Yeah. But she ended up being a devout Christian anyway. So I'm like, really? You would have been fine. But it was all meant to be, because there was a plan. So
that's really interesting, Tiffany, because he said he had this experience with nature that inspired him to be a pastor. Yeah. No different from my experiences as a child inspired me to be a pastor. And my experiences were very extraterrestrially in tuned and galactic tuned. And that's what inspired me, because we're just trying to be the best person we can be. And sometimes in the areas that we live in, we just go to the first religion that's around us. And you were saying, from a Southern Baptist to a Catholic and then the Lutheran, that's a hell of a combination right there. Let's call it for what it is. as a pastor, and I came from like the Pentecostal, the real wacky ones. So like that's what I was into, and even I didn't fit into that. But just for everyone out there, whether you're a Christian or not, you know, it's these experiences we have with nature and the universe that inspires us to be better people. And we do that in any way that is available to us. And when we have a society of saying, if you're a good person, you go to church and you help people and you deliver the message of the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, the Bible. All right. You know, it gets kind of mixed up sometimes, but I love that his inspiration actually came from nature and the universe, not necessarily a pastor telling him Sunday morning, you need to do this and change your life. His inspiration came from this eagle that was flying right next to you guys on top of this peak. So simple yet beautiful. Amazing. So please continue. Amazing.
So we had, you know, he's always, you know, it's interesting because the light beings never say God. They said source, source, source. But he would use the term God. So they would help me like decipher. It's like, what is he talking about? God, source. Oh, okay. So God's in every living being. And so there you go. For him to say he got the message from God via an eagle. And so an eagle has always been our thing, you know, with my biological dad and I. And so it's just, you know, very beautiful. I guess his time was done as a park ranger, and we moved back into the Hampton Roads area in Norfolk, Virginia. We moved back there, and then shortly after, you know, their divorce was an ugly one. It wasn't pretty. It was very messy. It was a lot of I feel there was a lot of confusion on both parts. I knew at 5 years old, all they needed was a good counseling session. Those two need to have a heart-to-heart with each other and express themselves. And how many marriages are dissolved just because of ego and not willing to work together? And it's just, you know, and I'm not saying all of them are bad. I mean, if you're in a very abusive situation, you need to get out of there. But they were young. They were young, and you know how, I don't know, just gung-ho, egotistical we are, like in our 20s, you know. And so my parents were young parents, and they ran away and eloped to get married, which really upset both sets of the families. So, but
and unhappy in-laws will make your life really, really hard. If your in-laws don't get together, you will fall apart.
Yeah, and that was it. My mother said that my biological grandmother, who I adored, just, you know, she goes, she didn't like me too much. And I was like, how do you know? Did she tell you? It was just the way she looked. I'm like, she's got Native American blood in her. They always have that stare, you know.
That's just their face, you know.
That's just their face. And that's what I learned too, is being in the mountains there. I saw, this is how I learned that there's guardians, earth beings that choose after they leave their earthly body, their physical experience, that they do come back in spirit and protect. And I saw Native Americans, and I stopped and I was like, oh, am I, you know, invading your space? How does a young child? I was like, wait, am I okay? And they're like, oh no, you're fine. You know, I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm like, we're guardians. The earth has many guardians that works for her. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful.
Wow.
You know, and so I've always been very respectful of, I know we don't really own anything. That's just a big lie, you know. And we need to live in harmony with this planet. And but you know, I've always known we don't really own anything, and that they are great protectors in certain areas. And
Tiffany, real quick, and this is all going on when you were 3 and 4 at that time period?
Yeah, I was like 3 or 4.
And you said you saw Native Americans, and you said that somewhere's in your line. You know, what tribe was this for everyone listening?
Okay, so my grandmother and I just was doing all the genealogy lately. So this was my dad's mom, Okay, so her father, my great grandfather, then was the Florida tribe, Ocala Indian, Osceola. Is my saying that right? Those type, that tribe is where he came from.
Okay. So I think that's
I'm probably saying it incorrectly, but it's a Florida tribe. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the Seminole, and then there's the Osceola. What I know the tribe you're saying.
Yes,
I don't know if I'm saying it right, but
my grandmother had the high cheekbone. I mean, you could look at her and tell that she definitely. Oh yeah. And
interesting.
So, yeah.
And I find that so interesting that, like you were saying, they were all right. You were there, and the thing with our ancestors that are protecting the lands in these areas, they're all right with new beings being there as long as they understand and respect the land. And as a child being pure-hearted, they understood that you respected that land and did not want to disturb it. Therefore, you were allowed to be on those lands. Where the people coming in there, clearing it all out and putting huge condos that will never be sold, and it's just a money laundering scheme. You know, they see right through all of that, you know, and that's a beautiful story. Amazing. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Very interesting. So as these experiences continued for you and these connections, was there anything else that happened other than the eagle and, you know, not wanting to pick the flower? What other connections did you have with nature that at a later point in your life you said, this isn't normal for a child to experience?
It wasn't really until after we left that area. I was 6 or 7 years old, and so this was. I'm not going to really go into too much about that, but I guess my parents, you know, even though they were separated, I'm not sure, but somehow a little brother came along, and he was born, even though they were separated. I'm like, okay, whatever. I never again get straight answers out of that. Do we ever? But so my little brother came along. So we're about 5 years apart, and things started to really. Now we're in a different area now, but there was a creek in our backyard, and I always loved to go play in the creek. And so once I started school. Which was torture for me because I'd rather be outside. I didn't know why I was being sent to the school. What am I learning in school that I don't already know? You know, that didn't have any value. It just, you know, no. From day one, I never liked school and what they taught. You know, sure, okay, so we have to communicate. Okay, whatever counts. I already knew how to count. You know, what I was going to use in life. And so it was just, I always loved just being outside, rolling around. I mean, really experiencing the earth, rolling around. My mother was like, oh, here, I want you to wear this frilly little dress. And I'm like, I'm not wearing that dress, you know. And so just put it on. So I put on this little dress and I go jump in the creek in the back. And she got mad. And she goes, what? I'm like, this is not an outside playing in the yard dress, you know, outfit. I need my pants. So, but I knew that something wasn't, because I could still see the spirits around. And when my grandmother, her mother, when she transitioned, she came to me that night and talked to me and told me. And so I knew that call was coming the next morning, and I didn't want to go to school.
Whoa, Josh. Doesn't this sound really familiar? Samantha and Hammond's episode, near-death experience.
Yeah.
Same situation. I just want to shout that out. Anytime someone's speaking and it connects to a previous episode of the same experience, that's it. So before your grandmother, after she transition, which I love that you use that terminology because that's the conclusion that we came to. It's a transition. You know, she reached out to you, right?
And she told me what was happening, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I was all right.
Can you describe that? Go in a little bit more detail about that experience.
Well, I've always had very very vivid dreams. I remember my dreams, whether it's, communication with others, whether astral traveling, whatever. I've always been able to recall that. And it was she just came to me and this was like, I just want you to know, I'm moving on, but I'm still going to be with you. And I was like, oh, I understand. I get it, And it was just kind of like, because nature taught me that energy doesn't die, it just recycles. And so she's being recycled or upgraded energy-wise. Oh, awesome. Okay. So not in physical form anymore. Okay, I got it. And so it was, and then, okay. So I was like, I'll tell Mom. Because she probably don't want to hear it, but okay. And so then the next morning I was like, Mom. And I'm like, do I tell her? And I was like, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe not yet. I know she's going to get a phone call. And I wanted to stay home from school. And she was like, no, I want you to go to school. I was like, maybe she feels that she knows something. And I'm like, I just want to stay home with you today. I feel like you need me. I was like 6 at this time, 6 years old. And she's like, no. So, I get on the bus and I'm having a fit. I'm crying. I'm screaming. The bus driver's like, what? I was like, I don't want to go to school. My mom's going to find out. And I told her, and she's like, she takes the bus. She pulls in front of the house. The bus driver goes talk to my mom. My mom's like throwing her hands in the air like, no, I can't deal with this. Take her to school. And the bus driver came back and she goes, I'm so sorry. I have to take you to school. I'm like, that's fine.
Wow.
And so then I went to school and I stayed in the bathroom all day. I skipped school. Well, in the school, I stayed in the bathroom because I'm like, what's going on? How come she's not? I didn't understand. How come my mother wasn't reaching out to me? We're supposed to all be helping each other. And I'm going to tell you, I always remember how I felt as a child. Children don't feel like they're children. All right. Yeah. Their soul has an experience. And I never felt my age.
An old soul in a new vessel.
Yes. And so I felt kind of hurt that my mother didn't, want me there to help her. And so then
you felt like you did something wrong by seeing your grandmother, and you just automatically assumed, well, Mom, didn't you see her too?
Not yet. Not at that time. I was just until I went home, and then Mom's like, "Oh, I have something to tell you." I was like, "Yes, I know." And then I told her, and it's like, "Oh, she has a message," and she goes, "No, I don't want to hear it." And she goes, "You should not be doing that." And I'm like, "Be doing what?" And she goes,
"The devil's work."
Right. She goes, talking to spirit like that, and I'm like, "But it's your mother." Like, what?
Was your mother a demon that I'm not aware of? Is she the spawn of Satan? Or is this our grandmother, your mother?
Yes,
Get over it.
I'm like, what? And she goes, you shouldn't be talking to spirit like that. You should be talking. And I'm like, why? Then she goes, because it's just not everyone can do that. She goes, don't you understand? Not everyone can do that, and you shouldn't say things like that because people get confused. And I'm like, really? Other people can't do this?
Forget about your feelings.
Yeah.
People can't handle that, so you should suffer.
Right.
What?
I know. So that's when I said, well, what about the light beings that are around me? And she goes, light beings?
Oh.
She goes, do you mean angels? I've never heard the term before until my mom said angels. I was like, what the heck's an angel? And she goes, okay, we're going to church. I'm going to take you to church and I'll show you pictures of angels. And I'm like, they don't look like that. They don't have wings. I'm like, I don't see them with wings. There are winged beings, but they don't show up like that, and I'm like, what in the world is this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not taking that pill. Thank you very much. I'm like, that's not my reality. I've got to stay in my reality.
And then Tiffany, another great point you brought up, right? Her answer to helping you understand this is to take you to church, to learn out of a book that tells you that all these things are real and that we can communicate with them. Hence Jesus talking to his ancestors that have been dead, Moses, Abraham, talking to them thousands of years, talking to evil demon spirits. So the fact that her explanation of why you shouldn't be doing this is to take you to a church and have you read a book where people are exactly doing that.
Yeah.
The irony.
Mm-hmm. I know. And so I tried the church thing just to please my mom, and there's a danger in that. I did a lot of pleasing my mom because I was the oldest. I didn't feel like I really had a childhood because I had to keep her balanced because she was so off balance, emotionally off balance. And I know how hard it was being a single mother with 2 kids, you know, you know, I watched her make herself sick. I watched her allow cancer to activate in her body. Aha. I didn't know how to articulate that when I was young. At that time, I think I was 7. Yeah, because it took 2 years for it to develop enough to be tested. I was 7, and I watched her. I mean, now kids can see auras. Kids can see the energy, and I could always see the energy around somebody. And so I saw her energy, and she was depressed a lot, always crying. And it almost, I mean, it's like, oh, my mother is very weak and unstable. And so I would try to make her laugh, try to help her. And I noticed that when I did that, her aura was lighter and brighter. And so, but I noticed that there was, I would say, like these black specks in her aura. I know it wasn't an energy attachment. I mean, as far as like another being. All right. I knew there wasn't a possession that was taking place. I knew it was her own design. And, you know, always upset, always crying. Where's the first place a lot of women get cancer? Heart chakra area, right in the breast. And so I saw it go in. I saw her allow it to go into her body. And then I watched, it was like a little spark tink, of activating. And I was like, uh-oh. And I was like, that's okay. She can undo this. How do you know this? You know, I didn't know. But she didn't take the means or the ways. She didn't trust, right? She had to see to believe. And which I didn't understand is like, what's in that book? You know, because I'm seeing a bunch of stuff that's not in that book that you're reading and want me to read in church. And I'm like, I don't understand. But I would try, go through communion. The minister did not like me because I asked him questions he could not answer. And
don't ask questions.
Look out for her.
Just say
She's
yes.
a problem child. And I'm like, whatever.
And what you brought up, just to clarify this, what you're saying about the cancer and you being more aware and being able to see auras and etc. And it has been scientifically proven. And just the other week when we had Samantha on, and she was saying she unfortunately went through a lot of abuse and stuff like that. And because of that, living in the state of fight or flight all the time from the abuse, it caused a lot of different physical problems to occur. And stress, fear, anxiety, all of these things, negativity, depression, that messes up our frequency.
It does.
And that can allow a lot of other things to go wrong with these vessels. And that is scientifically proven. And you just brought it up. You saw this as a child manifesting itself.
Yep.
We are not saying in any shape or form or way those with these awful diseases have brought it upon themselves. We are not saying that, but there are ways to combat it. And some situations, there are other contributing factors that are feeding into this experience or sickness to take hold, without a doubt.
Right.
Wow.
And that was I knew I wanted to come in and just help and be a healer. I didn't know how to articulate how to be a healer. I was like, I just want to help people, help the planet, help, you know, all beings. But when you say you just want to help others, they automatically take it to mankind, right? And I'm talking broad spectrum here. I'm talking all beings. And, you know, people are, oh, you want to be a nurse or you want to be a doctor, all that sweet. And I'm like, I don't even know what a nurse, what are you talking about? You know, I don't know what these things are. And, you know, and so it's just without really understanding. And this is where I think a lot of children are so misunderstood because, you know, they live in this beautiful world. And once you disconnect from that, then you're trying to make sense of it. And it doesn't make sense from the outside. You got to go back in the
inside. You know, with your mother struggling with this, did she make it through or unfortunately not?
Well, what's interesting is that then in the 70s, okay, in the late 70s, they give a time frame of when you're cured from cancer, the C word, okay? When you have the cured range was like 12 years. Now it's 5. It was 12. So she hit her 12-year mark. And so then, hey, guess what? She was cured. But years later, it came back a second time under her arm, the lymph nodes. And then the third and final time was in her bones. And I knew that was it. But the first time, now, so I was at 7. So my mom got remarried when I was 8.5. And so it took about 2.5 years, and then it showed up in a mammogram. And she panicked. Here she is now, newly married with, I think, a year they were married, and now all of this. And so it was, she started packing things up. She was like, I'm leaving things for you, and I'm putting your name, leaving things for your brother, leaving things. I'm going to start boxing things up so when you're older, you'll know. And I'm looking at her going, what are you doing? It's not your time. And she stopped and looked at me and she goes, how dare you? Only God knows that. I was like, no, you know that. And I was like, okay, Mom, the angels are saying it's not your time. And she's like, no, I can't hear this. And I'm like, but I'm saying it's not your time. You should be happy. I don't get it. And I was like, I'm not stepping on any toes. I wouldn't be giving the information if it was none of my business. I was like, but I'm hearing this. And I was like, okay, that's fine. You do what you got to do. She did pull through. She got through that. You know, and then she would, I didn't find out till much later, till after I had left the house and everything. But and then I found out, you know, realizing that, you know, you talk in your sleep. I'm like, I do? They're like, yeah, we can ask you questions and you give us really great information in your sleep. I'm like, what? And so then I realized my mom was doing that. She would come in and ask me questions in my sleep. And I was like, but you won't hear me when I'm awake, but you'll talk to me when I'm asleep. I don't understand. Maybe it's just what I won't remember, you know, but I was like, okay, that's strange.
Yeah.
And she didn't hear past lives, nothing. And then years later, I mean, gosh, you know, her friends would tell me, oh, I remember, you know, we would have great parties, you know, during the day while y'all were in school, you know, and the women would get together and we'd have great lunch parties and we would talk about past lives and things. And I'm like, say what now? You would talk about what? I'm like, but you would talk to me about things like that. Okay, whatever.
And how did that make you feel?
Like, there was a trust. I think I felt like, why didn't she trust me? Or I couldn't understand. I was so confused by that. Was like, I'm your child. I love you. I don't want to hurt you or harm you. So I just really couldn't comprehend why I was treated that way. She treated me that way. And when you have a blank, you know, we have to, and they don't help us to understand what those missing pieces are. We'll fill those blanks in, and I'll tell you we're normally wrong because it's filled in with fear. It's filled in with other things. And I just, you know, but she would always tell me, you're so much like your dad. And I'm like, well, is that good or bad? I don't understand why you say that. and it's that was you two. That's your two relationship. Our relationship should be different,
Mm-hmm.
And
do you have children?
Yes, I have two sons.
So my question is, now that you're a mother of two sons, do you think any of it was trying to protect you? Looking in retrospect of everything versus how you are with your two children, is there anything that's different that you could speak on?
Yeah, I think looking back on it now, yes, not just because of her, but my
Great
grandparents.
question.
Both sets of my grandparents. But her dad, ironically, was very protective over me. Now I could talk anyway. I could be me in front of my grandparents, and they were fine. They were very open to that. And her father, my grandfather, didn't want me to. I didn't realize at first. I just thought he's like, I'm going to take you to school. So he would take me to school. He would drop me off, pick me up from like the end of elementary school all through junior high school. And I never understood. I just thought, okay, just me. He didn't do this to my younger brother. He just did this for me. And then some days, if I was really upset, he goes, let's just skip school today. I'm like, all right, Grandpa, let's go. We'll go get lunch. We'll go hang out. Now,
that's a good grandpa.
That's awesome.
He'd go visit his friends, and so I was like, okay, this is so cool. And he knew a great people. He knew a lot of great people, carpenters, electricians, all sorts of, it was just amazing. And, I liked going over to his carpenter's friend's house and sit outside, and he had like a garage where his workshop. So we're watching him woodworking, and it was like, wow, this is so fascinating. I love the trades. I would just sit there and just watch and be like, this is so cool. Look at this skill, and look how talented this being is. And so I learned a lot from that. But it wasn't until I heard him tell my mother going, we have to protect her. We don't want her taken. And I'm like, what the heck is he talking about? Taken? Who's going to take me? And then I had to stop and think and going, maybe I need to be very careful of what I'm saying, and so then just start testing the waters, asking other friends like in junior high, do you see this? And they're like, no, looking up their facial expressions said it all before they even open their mouth. And I'm like, okay, maybe everyone doesn't see spirit or experience these things. Yeah. And I was like, trying to process everything. But it makes sense now. It's just, okay, the protection. So, yeah.
You thought you were just like everyone else, and you're realizing that you're not. I've been there.
Yeah.
I wonder what made your grandfather so special. What made your grandfather like so in tune with what you were going through? I'm sure Josh and I would love to hear that.
Well,
absolutely.
He was very spiritual, and he was a Mason. And both my
was he now?
Okay. And so was my other grandfather. My grandmothers were Eastern Star. I was a Joby.
Oh, wow.
I was a Job's daughter. I was a Joby, like my mother was a Job's daughter.
Right.
And there's good people, and to tell you people like, oh my goodness, it's a cult. It's like, there's so many different cults.
Illuminati, devil worshiping,
Luciferians.
I know. The world.
Right? I was like, just because the people at the top might not be so nice doesn't mean the whole organization is bad. And also forgetting, we don't know our whole history. And that's a lie with the origins of Freemasons. The Freemasons are spiritual. It goes way back than when they say it does. So the Templars, everything was turned upside down, inverted, and used for
evolved humanity has been the only mission.
Yep.
Every other mission is distorted and misinformation.
Right.
Facts. Done. Because real Masons are great men that would do anything for anyone, regardless of their background, color, history, any of that. It doesn't matter. Help your fellow human beings. We're all on this rock together, and the universe is within your mind. That's it.
And that's it. And that's what I got to see by him taking me to his other friends too, which is so cool because it is a strong brotherhood, but it's not like what you think. They're there to help people. You know, that carpenter gave furniture to people who couldn't afford it. You know, I mean, they're good people. They worked within their
Shriners Hospitals. Hospitals.
Oh, I would use
$2 million a day donated out of Mason's pockets to provide free medical health care, which is something unheard of in this country.
Yes, that's right. I love going to the Shriner Circus. He always take me to the Shriner Circus too, and I love those. Those are great.
And not only do they pay, they also transport these children there themselves and have special vehicles that work around the clocks to help them.
Beautiful work.
I got to see the good of people. I'm telling you, not everything is good, not everything is bad. You just have to use your own discernment. You have to trust what you're getting on your inside.
Absolutely.
They let me be who I was. My grandfather let me talk where my mother wouldn't, you know, and my other set of grandparents did the same thing. And so it was just, So I think I understood then, oh, okay, I think I get it. But there was never any talk about like who these light beings were. No one ever asked for any other validation on it, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just if they want to think it's angels, let them think it's angels. And I would always, even in teenage, I would go and find. We lived right off of Big River, and so the houses on the next street over, they had the piers, right? You know, they had the docks and their boats. And so I would go sit on one of those docks and just for hours, just staring and meditating and having conversation with these beings. And these beings actually taught me a lot. And so it was just, I just remember having a conversation like, okay, so help me understand this church thing, this Jesus character, you know, and they're like, well, it's, you know him as Yeshua. And I was like, oh, okay. They're like, that story is, kind of distorted.
Layered and complicated.
Right. And
not important. Keep focusing.
Right. That's it. They would not talk about anything that was not important. That's what I loved too. It was just that it was, and so I was like, so how come we come into this life not knowing anything? I think I would want to know. And so like, okay, so Yeshua knew what was going to happen to him. Do you think if you knew you were going to be crucified, how easy would that be? And I'm like, ooh. So I thought about that for a couple of days. I was like, you know what? I think it is best that we don't remember everything.
Good point, Tiffany. And Josh, especially all the stuff you've been through, right? If someone would have went 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and told both of us, Josh and I, this is all the messed up stuff that's going to happen to you, I would have gave up a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
Right? Am I right?
Most definitely, yeah.
That's a great point. And I think that goes for everyone that's watching this. Really think about the trials and tribulations that you've been through in your life. Mm-hmm. And if someone showed you all those things, would you still have the will to live it? Mm-hmm. I really don't think I would have. No. I would have just been always depressed, sad, and anxious and dreading the future instead of looking forward to it. Great point, Tiffany.
Right, and then living in that state of fear makes things worse. It makes it worse. You actually change it and make it worse than what it could have been. And so it's I think another reason why my grandfather let me talk so much is that I'm an old Templar. I remember being a Templar in a past life. Hold on.
Yeah, you should.
That's awesome.
But I put the Egyptian because it was beautiful. And then I have a queen cobra. Oops, let me see. Over here with the other eye. So I got both eyes, Horus and Ra. So nice. I got to get her eyes redone because you can't see her face anymore. But this is
cobra.
Queen and king.
That's awesome. And
so I would tell my grandfather old Templar stuff because I said, do you know that Templars are older than the Roman Templars? That they were Gnostic Templars, that there were Egyptian Templars, that there was even Atlantean Templars.
Absolutely. And an
Mic
important
drop.
note, yeah, we come from the same family, all right? And one of my direct ancestors, John White, who was a very prominent Templar. And these Templars were going to the Middle East, and at first they were fighting against these Islamic cultures and stuff, but then they became friends and learned their wisdom and knowledge, just as I did living in the Middle East and learning their ancient knowledge and incorporating it. And the point you would have the Templar's cross with Egyptian symbology in there, it's one of the same thing, and it's no coincidence that you have that connection, because that's just something that rolls in our bloodline. We can't help it, but it's there. It is what it is. It doesn't change who we are. We are still ourselves. But the Templars, they talk about that energetic shield.
Yes.
The best shield you could possibly have, right?
That's it. Okay, so I have to say that I'm the first daughter born on my dad's side of the family in 7 to 8 generations. They knew I was going to be a boy. The nursery, everything was blue, yellow, green. Everything was just set for a boy, because that family didn't have girls. And here I come. Surprise!
Surprise!
But I was such a tomboy, of course. I was such a tomboy, and then I had all male cousins, And so we played. So I just always thought I'm one of the guys. And then plus past life brotherhood, right? But totally revered the sisterhood. And so the light beings helped me to understand my past lives. And I was like, are the Templars bad? And they said, the ones that what version? What version of the Templars? They were like, what was your mission as a Templar? I was like, to protect the divine feminine, to protect the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Like, you were the right Templar. You were on the right side. You were on the white side of the Templars. Don't worry about it. And I was like, oh, okay. And they infiltrated, of course, as evil does. We're gonna kill them all. Try to. They don't kill every, they don't ever release. Some escape.
Friday the 13th, 1307.
Yep. Yes.
My ancestors were brutally slaughtered. Yeah.
And that's why I got this tattoo on a Friday the 13th in honor of.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's why I got this tattoo, 13. I'll never forget, never forgive.
Yeah. And it's a lucky number for us, because we make it good. They took that away.
The same reason Taylor Swift writes it on her hand. The public don't know about that. I'm calling it out.
I didn't know about that either.
Oh, yeah.
But how come most folks don't have a floor 13? Why do they try to eliminate 13 from society? But they went in, and just as everything that we have now, there was a good version of it, and it was destroyed and rebuilt and twisted to evil. So
yep, exactly.
It always has beautiful origins, because parasites can't create. They knock over and rebuild and invert that energy, but they cannot create, because you need light to create.
Let there be light.
Yes.
Vibration and frequency. And what you mentioned, you were a tomboy in this girl's body.
Yes.
That's the opening of the feminine, the left side, and the right side of the brain. And it seems like through your experience for so many generations of only being in that masculine, part of the brain, this cycle seems the one where, although you still had that, you were tapping into the feminine energy, the divine nine energy.
I was late developing. I didn't have my menstrual cycle until I was 15.
Wow, that's late. Way late.
I was angry that I'm trying to understand, and then I'm realizing too in schools, it's like, I could play sports, neighborhood sports with the guys, no big deal. But in school, I couldn't play baseball. You have to play softball. I'm like, I can hit a small ball. It's an insult to my intelligence. You think I can't? You have to give me a bigger ball? I'm like, no, I want to play baseball. You know, that I can't.
You were playing with the boys just fine. I was like, probably whipping their butts.
Yeah, so I kept saying, no, you're not a boy. And I'm like, what the heck is this separation crap? I don't understand. And then it made me angry. And then I'm like, why am I a female? And why is a female weak? And I stopped and said, wait, I caught myself. Who was my example of a female? It was my mother. I thought she was weak. And then I'm going to tell you, I don't normally tell everybody, but Isis stepped in when I was 15 and helped me. The deity symbolism of Isis, she stepped in and she goes, listen, knight, you've got your armor, you've got your sword. And she goes, you can't just go around chopping people's heads off in this life. I'm like, darn. She's like, we're working towards peace now, and you've got to befriend this feminine side of you. We got to rise this woman up, and I'm going to help you. You know, just like you honored the Holy Grail, you honored that divine feminine. She's in you, and you've got to honor her too.
Honor her. Honor her.
Exactly. And so Isis helped me a lot from 15 to 20 to honor myself. And the light being said the same thing. You can still have your shield and your sword, but they're misunderstood. They're used to deflect light. All right. Think about how shiny they are. They're not used to harm. Remember, you have to have a harm none vibration in this lifetime. We're going towards peace now. And I'm like, we're here. Like, we're here now. Just all right. But use it as a shield. You are guarded. You are shielded. Deflect negativity with that sword, but don't use it to harm.
You can't. You can't use it. That's the energetic shield. You know, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were like, just use it as a bubble up shield, protection, whatever. Like, I've done my whole life and I didn't realize until they told me what was happening. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. So they've been great. Even now to this, they've been with me my whole life and just have helped me. And I would ask, you know, so then you go and learn things. You go to spirituality schools, which is, I'm telling you, the biggest school is within. Only school you need to go to. But you go to other things because you're trying to understand, you know, and you hear all these things. And it's like, well, you have to have a name. You have to know who you're communicating with. All right. Mm-hmm. So I asked these beings, what's your name? And they're like, we don't have individual names. We're this unity consciousness. We're so high vibrational. We're individual, but we're not. And I'm like, okay, I didn't really understand, but I got it. I've trusted these beings my whole life. They've never steered me wrong. They've never told me to do anything bad. And they've taught me a lot of things, and they're just very beautiful, peaceful energy. And they've come around in healing sessions. They taught me, now we're going to show you. This is why you don't see spaceships. It's because you astral travel, you take off, you use portals and stargates. So anyone that has that frequency, you're going to watch what happens. And so they would teach me. So in healing sessions, I would watch a portal open and in come. And it would depend on the person who's receiving the healing. Okay. Because I would notice it's different for everybody. But one person, she was very high vibrational, a high frequency. And she had some master quantum healers step in. Tall blue beings were working on her. And there was one being this being didn't have wings, but it did have a scepter like Raphael. They say, you know, the Archangel Raphael has this gold scepter with this beautiful green orb on the end. And he would scan her body, and as scanning her body, the green would go into the body, and what was being pulled out was that black stuff I would see. And then he pulled up, and the orb is black. They would wave his hand, and it's green again. And he would do it all over her body until every bit of that black was gone. I don't know who that being was, but I was like, you're not an angel, are you? Not an angel. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And they're like, there's a fine line between angels and ETs. Hello, it's a dump category, the angels is from the church. Anything that's unexplained, just throw it in the angel category.
Thank you. Finally, someone saying exactly what I've said over and over and over. negative, unexplained energy, demon, positive, unexplained energy, angel.
All the same.
You still don't know what that demon or angel is because of lack of, knowledge about what these things are. Beautiful. And these higher density beings, a lot of them don't have names. They're, as we said in the beginning of this video, we're beyond titles. It doesn't matter. I wish we didn't even have names. Yeah. And
they told me we have a sound. We all are recognized by a tone, by a frequency. And that's how I recognize them. Is they're like, you hear us, come in. The same way you hear nature. When you tune into nature, you tune into universe. You tune into everything. Because just like what you said, I think, Robert, you said in one, the earth doesn't only have a heartbeat. And when you drum, you hear all the planets' heartbeats. You hear the universe. You hear it all come together.
Done.
That's awesome.
And so many of us, we don't think like that. We don't think like that. Like, imagine if your name was a frequency. My name is.
Yes.
My name is.
Right.
My name is.
Yeah.
Like, what? But that's what it is.
That's what it is. And we're all musical notes in Source's song.
That is beautiful.
That's amazing way to put it.
I'm just going to shut up from this point now. There's nothing else to say. That's it. And frequency and vibration. Beautiful insight, Tiffany. Spot on. Wow. I'm sorry. I'm just taking it all in a little bit. I know I got to keep the interview going. I know everyone's watching this, but every now and then someone says something that kind of throws me for a loop, and I need some processing time, because I'm hearing it in real time. And and most of you have thought the same thing. And it's just nice hearing others say it. Wow. So, Tiffany, with that being said, like I said in the beginning, this is a perfect story of a little girl or a little boy stuck in a girl's body, we could say, timelines and all that. But, amazing story of a child who is in tune and sensitive and aware of things. And some of the encouragement that came from your grandfathers and some other family members and your father. And then some of the discouragement and possibly protection and trying to get you more into, well, when we have questions about these things, we go to here, a church, versus of going, hey, we go within. It seemed like you were kind of on a piece of string doing the balancing act.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Trying to please your mother, as you said, and trying to please your grandfather and your dad, who said, oh, you're just special, just roll with it, you'll figure it out someday. That's how they were. And then your mom would say, hey, you got to cut this off, and you got to base your ideas and what you're experiencing off of this book written a long, long time ago, and a man sitting on stage telling you how to live, instead of just trusting your instinct and what you're experiencing. Must have been hard. Did you have a lot of friends?
Not really. Not really.
No?
I really just like to keep to myself, because every time I would try to have friends, it made me feel stranger, more different, more like, okay, I don't resonate with them. So it's like, all right, that's fine. And so I just read a lot. I stayed some time and just, yeah.
You wanted to relate, like what Josh is saying. You wanted to find a friend or an animal. Just it probably didn't even matter what it was. Just something to relate to, right?
Yeah, but I found that in nature. Nature gave me what I was looking for always.
Nature, every time.
Every time.
Brilliant. I love that message. I absolutely agree with it too.
I was in high school and didn't like the jungle, didn't like the high school, didn't like that. I'm like, what's the difference between this and prison? We're being shipped every day. Bus. They have the same buses. They have the same line lunch. I mean, what's the difference between, this is day prison for kids. What are you trying to teach us? And I'm like, I don't want part of this.
I used to call it the same thing, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's absolutely right. The buses, the food.
Yes.
How the lights are in the white walls.
Yes. And some with no windows. I'm like, what the heck is this? I got to look outside.
My high school was a vocational school called Salem County Votech. It was built in an actual prison that they converted to a school. The windows were way above. You couldn't see. It was just light coming in. And so believe me when I would say this place is an effing prison,
yep.
It was actually an effing prison.
It was. Oh my God. Well, I guess for me, because in the 80s, and so just that's all, and
you
so
noticed the indoctrination. You noticed that.
Yep.
So did Josh.
Yep.
So did every person watching this.
And it didn't matter what time frame it was. It just is always just that same. And so I would skip school and go to the beach. I would go. I'm going to the beach. I'm going to nature. I'm going somewhere, and I learn more there than I do here. So I'm out.
Completely understand. And Josh, I'm kind of curious, and you can add more on. As a child, my grandfather, he was a Vietnam vet. A big hunter. He was a cowboy, and I mean cowboy, an actual cowboy. And he would take me out in the woods with him all the time. I used to deer hunt, but I was always afraid. I never killed anything. I took shots, but I'm so thankful. I didn't want to kill anything. I just enjoyed being in a tree stand, out in nature, away from human beings, and just watching the squirrels and the animals and just observing it. And Josh, did you have any experiences like that out in nature? And how did that help you?
Dude, that's pretty much my childhood you just described. I spent a lot of time hunting with my grandfather and uncle, fishing all the time with my grandfather, seeing different rivers. He was really, really into Native American culture, so we spent a lot of time going to rendezvous too, which was absolutely amazing, learning about all the different cultures.
So, Josh, I feel like I learned more from my grandfather than I ever did from school. Would you agree that you learned more from your grandfather than school?
Yeah. It's funny that she said that Tiffany said when she used to just go to the beach. There's a group of guys through middle school and high school where we ditched. This is before we had our license though. But it would literally, because we lived out in the country and we had to be bussed into a town called Howard's Grove. It'd literally take from first period to the end of the day for us to get home. We'd beat the bus by 10 minutes. And our parents would have no idea, but we did that constantly. We would just walk. We just walked the farm fields all the way.
So walking, you got home quicker than taking the bus?
Yeah, like 10 minutes, but it took all day to walk. But we had the experience all together. We'd play in the rivers and try to catch, fish, and a bunch of times we caught turtles and took them as pets and find deer skulls. And a couple of times farmers busted us and they're like, "What are you guys doing here?" And we're like, "Oh, we're putting up the snowmobile."
You're walking on my
it's spring. It's the middle of spring, and we're like, "Well, see that? We gotta go."
Wow.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's we just walked everywhere. We didn't, when you think about, oh my goodness, we totally were protected, right? We totally were protected because we do these things I wouldn't allow my kids, my own sons to do.
Not today.
Right?
No, you're not walking all around town. No.
If kids did what we as kids did, they wouldn't be around no more.
They wouldn't be around. And I have to tell you, something really triggered. And this is, all of us who love nature, we read the land. So that means anywhere you go, you pick up two imprints from not just the land itself, but her memories in that, or that memories of that space. Okay. And so and didn't know what was happening to me until I finally realized, oh my gosh, this is what's going on. But it was just the boys. I think my sons reached a certain age. Maybe it wasn't even the age, but it was. I remember they were young. They were like 3 and 4 years old, and my husband's retired Navy, so he was out to sea. Of course, everything happens when your spouse goes out to sea. So, but it was, and my dad was living with us. We were all together. But this fear would come over me. And this is the house I grew up in, but something happened, something shifted. And I started leaving the house and then going back. And everything that rubbed me the wrong way, I was understanding why. It was because I wasn't really paying attention to how much energy was hanging. That wasn't ours, that was theirs. I didn't know how to clear it. And so then I was learning to clear the energy. But something, too, was always, I have to watch and protect my sons. Maybe it was my grandfather warning, protect your sons, protect your sons. And so I always had this, it wasn't a fear, but in the back of my head that they could be taken. And I was like, okay, so is my grandfather telling me something? But I would go into certain areas around town and would pull them closer to me. Like, I don't trust this area. What's going on? And I have to tell you, the biggest places that always would trip my sensor is a big box store with the W, right? That place freaks the crap out of me. I mean, I could meditate for an hour.
Wally World, I call it.
Exactly. I could only be in there for like 5 to 10 minutes. Hurry, let's get what we need and get out, because it's
ccp.com.
It's
ccp.com.
Programmed frequencies, I think, that's being pumped into there, and I don't like it. And I almost, my youngest son gave a scare because we walked into one. This was when we were in Virginia, and this was when they had the cart return cut into, like, when you first walk into the store, they had those big windows, and they had the cutout where you could push the cart. Well, I was grabbing a cart and I had both hands on them, and then I let go, stand right there while I grabbed the cart. And just that fast, he ran through the cart return and ran right into the store. I'm like, where are you? And so now I'm picking up my older son. I'm like, we're going in the Walmart looking, and I'm like frantic, where is my son? And I am having all this energy around me. And just so happens that day, the police were there doing fingerprinting for kids to protect. And so I'm like, okay, this is going to sound really crazy, but I really lost my son. I don't know where he is. And so they locked the store down. They found him. And so he was like, and the store employee found him. One of the store employees found him, and it's like, what's your mom's name? Mom. And I'm like, what my name is. But they're like, Mom. And so they found him.
Well, Mom, come to the front office, please. Mom, please come.
And so then, of course, we were right there. Let's get them fingerprinted. Let's get them protected, photographed, whatever. But did that really put them in a database, or did that protect them? Whatever. Yeah. But it was, right. I was like, no, Mama Bear. I'm like, okay, you're here. And I'm like, what were you doing? I wanted to go to the toy department. And I'm like, no, where are we going to get there? But, and they would always sit there and, oh, you're so overprotective, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, I just don't want you taken or kidnapped. Well, we're not girls. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy.
It doesn't. No. It doesn't. And what you're saying, Tiffany, when we talked before on the phone, and what you were saying about your grandfather having this overwhelming feeling we got to protect her. When I was a child, I was playing on a playground. My family was around, and someone tried to take me. I've heard my family bring it up a few times. When I try to ask them more additional information, it's like the only reason I found out about this happening, because I don't remember it for some reason, even though I was older. Anytime it'll slip out of their mouth, and like they'll be hearing something on the news to take him. They were like, "Oh, we remember when you were taken. Oh, what happened?" And they just change the subject, or they act like they don't remember the situation. They don't tell me if it was a man or a woman, what they did to me. They don't tell me absolutely nothing, but it doesn't matter. And I'm 6'8", When I was a little kid, I was way taller than every other kid my age.
Mm-hmm.
So it has nothing to do if you're a male or a female,
Yeah.
especially when children that are in tune and are being monitored, for example, me, by the men in black and the deep state military complex. They had a great interest in me and I out, and they were doing a lot to disrupt that. So I wish my family could tell me more about it, but it's something they're distraught about, and they probably think I can't handle it, you know. It's whatever. But it happens to everyone. So
and that's
protect your children.
I did. I homeschooled my sons.
And my mom and grandma, they were there. They were at the playground when this happened.
Wow.
That's how ballsy.
You hear about that, though. The parents are right there.
Right there.
And it doesn't, they're just that fast. And that's how, you just think about that, people. If they're that professional, what's going on?
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and so I homeschooled my sons you school them anyway, you're supposed to, but from preschool all the way to high school graduation, they were
awesome.
homeschooled. Now,
great.
And people are like, oh, what about socialization? I was like, you know what? That's a psych op. Just please stop that crap. You know, I know adults who don't like to socialize, so I don't even like,
Tell you the truth, one of my best friends growing up was homeschooled his entire life, and he was way more of a social butterfly than way more.
My guitar player in my metal band, I Am History, his whole life homeschooled. My best friend.
Yeah. And I mean, they learned more things than what you would learn in school. We had field trips. We did all sorts of stuff. We did life skills. Go out into nature. Go play. Go do things. They were introduced to sports. There's homeschool groups now that are huge, and that you can get together and do things. You know, whatever they wanted to do. You know, my youngest plays guitar, and so and he has for a long time, and he's really good at it. And so it's anything that's being cut out of schools now, music, sports, this, that, whatever, you know, just even the home ec, you know, life skills, the trades.
Yeah, the things you need.
Yikes, the things that we really do need.
But you can learn about your gender now, but you won't be able to do your taxes or work a job or build a single thing. Oh, you're welcome.
I know, exactly. Yeah, yes, exactly. That's it.
Here's your trigonometry homework.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it doesn't really matter that they think. I didn't realize, you know, as a child, they recognize the masculine, feminine in them, and they're very balanced. And to me, it seem like it was separated until 15, until I started, you know, my menstrual cycle. I was like, oh, I am woman. Oh my gosh, this hurts, you know. But and then it's like, oh, all right. But I would always be confused, even growing up, like, why did I keep getting little Barbie dolls, you know, for gifts or little girly things? And I was like, I want to play with my brother's truck. I'm going to go play with his dump truck. I'm going to go play with his cars. I'm going to go play with stuff. And one time my mom came in and it's like, what are y'all doing? And we're both playing. And it's like, okay, so I'll play with the Barbie dolls. And we had the He-Man set out. It's like, He-Man saving Barbie, you know, and it's like, it's just, you know, how kids play. I taught my sons everything, regardless of, it has nothing to do with the sex. If you want to learn how to live, you know, as an adult, you need to know to do all sorts of things. You need to know how to cook. You know, you need to know how to sew. I taught them sewing, just simple things. Can you sew a button back on or something? You know, just these types of things. You know, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. I did the Tiffany same thing real briefly. It's so similar. When I was young, I didn't have any humans, but my cousin lived next door. She was a girl. She was a tomboy, very much like you. And her dad was driving big rigs. She had a lot of trucks, but she had Barbies too. And I would go over there and play with her Barbies. Not because my toys were Barbies, just because I didn't have no toys and I had enough imagination that I would play. And Ken would be fighting Barbie. They would be doing boy things, but I would be playing with Barbies. It was, you know, it was normal. Those things don't really matter at all. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of us go through that. And in school, All my friends were taking wood shop. All my friends were taking all these like more masculine, computer groups. Me, being a young boy and stuff, I'm like, well, I don't want to be in, a sausage party, so I'm going to take these girly. And that was my initial intent. I want to take all girl classes, so I'm surrounded by girls for 2 hours out of the day instead of all my a-hole best friends, So I went in. I did sewing.
Yeah.
I did pottery, art, all these things that would all be girls, and I loved it. I learned so much from it.
You do.
So much from it,
Yeah.
and it just helped using both sides of the brain. And I played sports. So imagine an athlete in sewing class stabbing his finger, doing paper mache art and pottery and stuff, making like an ashtray for my mom, like
by your mom.
Like that kind of like stuff, you know what I mean? And it's us trying to use both sides of our brain.
Mm-hmm.
And if that, you got to be masculine, you got to be feminine. If that indoctrination wasn't always pushed onto us, we would actually be able to be better human beings and more understanding of women and men and how we're exactly the same.
Right. Yeah. Except for, the men are supposed to protect the women. They are built differently for a reason.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the women, though, doesn't mean just because the man's supposed to be the protector doesn't mean that you don't have any power. A female has immense power. You had a Stargate in your womb.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. And I know some women, I'm sure Josh do. I got a lot of women friends that I would put $1,000 down against a lot of my guy friends. I would put $1,000 down on them easily, saying they could whip their butts. Women can be just as powerful, and genetics is crazy. And
right.
I got some big women, big women. My mom was 5'9". My Uncle Bobby, when I was younger, he was at a bar. 3 big dudes jumped him. She came along, put both of them on the ground, and ran her stiletto through the one guy's cheek. And she destroyed these big, in the ghetto, big gangsters, pants hanging down to their knees. She stomped all 3 of them out because they were all on top, and she came up and ripped both of them down and put her stilettos right into them. They all went to the hospital. So women or not, it don't matter. We all have that strength, and men need to tap into their feminine, and feminine needs to tap into the masculine. It's important for balance, right, Tiffany?
Yes.
It really is. And that's what I asked, the light beings. I was like, okay, so can women be warriors? Like, absolutely. Women are strong warriors because they'll fight for their family and their community. And whereas the men can get distracted and will fight for a cause, and that cause they can be lied to and controlled and manipulated about what that cause is. And the brotherhood has been so saturated. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay. They're like, the women are more about the close inside and the men are the outside. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah. Something I learned in the Middle East when I lived there, where I lived specifically, there was a woman known as the Amazon woman. They were fierce warriors in, ancient Turkey. It was called Anatolia at the time, modern day Turkey. In my city, we had statues, a whole museum of these Amazon warriors. They would literally cut off their breast so they could use a bow and arrow.
Right.
And they were the most fierce warriors, and they killed more men over there than any other. They were more brutal. They were more brutal than the warriors. They're well-known Amazon warriors. Look them up, everyone. Modern-day Turkey. And these were fierce warriors. And right next to that, their museum was essentially a statue of the feminine divine. The goddess of love and war.
That's interesting you bring that up because teenage, I'm not you know, thin and frail looking. I'm very sturdy. And so
you're strong.
I'm strong. So in high school, they're like, oh, you're an Amazon woman. Look at you, Amazon. You know, and I had to look up, like, what's an Amazon?
You thought the jungle. You thought the
about?
Amazon
jungle. I'm
jungle.
like, wait, like, no, there's actually, you know, women warriors. And that's what brought that whole conversation on. And just like, oh, Wonder Woman came from, you know, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And they're like, but Hollywood made that look too pretty. And they're like, but no, they're very, very, very fierce. And then we even have that in learning that there's ET too that are just like that. So it's very interesting, you know, it's like, yeah, oh, that's great. So it's when I say that the women fight for the inside, for the home, for that all right, for that sacred inside space, and the man protects the sacred outside space. Okay, so that's what I mean by that is that so there's layers to exactly them coming together just like that, like the Merkaba, and bam, the masculine and feminine coming together is a very powerful team.
That's it. That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
That's it. Wow, so much powerful insight in here, and absolutely agree with everything you said in here. And with that being said, Tiffany, Josh and I, we found out about you, and I encourage everyone go to Goldilocks Productions. Check out our interview we did with Tiffany. But if you would just like a little bit in wrapping things up, to tell us a little bit with what you're doing with Goldilocks Productions. You know, now that we know you and your life experience, and we understand this is only 2% of everything you've ever experienced in your life. Of it, just tip of the iceberg, as most guests of mine. But everything you're doing with Goldilocks Productions, the interviews, the podcasts, and all of that, if you want to talk about that a little bit, and for everyone that's watching, that information is in the description, so please check it out. But yeah, tell us, Tiffany, a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting. So my son's graduated in 2010, and I knew moving forward, because I could feel that push. 2009 or 2008, they really started coming in. This is a business. You're going to be doing this, and I was kind of confused with even, you know, business and way of life. What I don't understand, it should just be way of life. But so they're like, you're going to do this now. After, you know, they're done to graduate, they're going to go and get their jobs. They're going to do their things. Great job. You're going to move into the spirituality. You're going to do more of the healing. You're going to provide healing services. Okay, great. So I started my business in 2010 on my mother's birthday, December 15th, because it's an honor for her. She's always behind me. She's been my big motivation. And so I did it on her birthday. Opened the business December 15th of 2010, my healing business. Now, about 5 years into, no, I should really say a little bit, like 3 years into the healing business, everything's doing, you know, really good, up and going. And then I was guided. I'm not going to take you down that whole trip on how it was guided, but it's interesting how you're on this one pebble, then they move you to another pebble, or another stepping stone, and another stepping stone, and they're all connected. But then I was introduced into, now you need to have your own show. We're going to take this to just podcast, like audio podcasting. What was that really big Blog Talk Radio, right? So now you're going to do that. So I had that. And then it's like, okay, now we're going to push you into now every bit of the way. Because if they had told me everything too much up front, I'd be like, no freaking way. Yeah. But it did gently guiding me to live streaming. And so I got into live streaming in 2013 when it was not popular. And those programs at that time were expensive. Live stream, Ustream, all these other kinds of, you had to buy the software. But it was like, okay, so and then these producers would come in and would teach me. They would come in too, different times. And I was like, is this what y'all want me to do? And the light being is like, yes, we're helping you. And the fact that I could sit here this long, sit still, is huge for me. Well, it was at that time. because so much energy would run through me that it's very hard to sit still and very hard to, now you want me to touch a computer, right? Because I would zap computers all the time. I was like, you want me to do this type of work, you're going to have to help me with this energy so I'm not killing computers and laptops, and that I can do this. They have literally taught me. I mean, they would go through my hands, my fingers, take me to websites. Here, go learn this, do this, you need this, and set this up. And I'm like, okay. And so we get to 2020 and everything happens and everyone's live streaming. And it's like, this is what we were preparing you for. Now you have this whole Goldilocks Productions set up, because my healing service, Goldilocks Temple of Healing, that's my healing business. And if we're going to call it Goldilocks Productions now, and you're going to have other show hosts on, all about the same thing is you need show hosts that's going to help just raise the vibration, help be there for everyone to assist them. You know, you can't do it for them, but just like with you, right? You're helping everyone and you're letting everyone have an opportunity to share their story, to share.
And that's important for healing. Sometimes that's the biggest part.
It is, because you can't heal what you don't feel.
Absolutely.
Sharing, you're bringing it back up. You got to feel it.
You gotta feel it. Exactly. That's it. That's beautiful. And that's what you're doing. Yeah. And not just aliens and UFOs, all sorts of spirituality, life experiences, everything.
Yeah, yeah. And we got to take them in steps, just to keep expanding, keep expanding, keep expanding. Yes, we know that this is here. We know all of that. That's great. Just keep expanding. Just keep pushing out a little bit more. Expand every day, you know, and everything will fall into place. But just you have to keep with it. And so that's how they wanted. And I really didn't understand. I trust, because I've already gone through that. Oh yeah, I'm gonna drag my feet and see what that felt like, you know. And so like, honor your mission. Oh damn. Okay, yep, I gotta do it. All right, that's fine. Now I'm doing it. And when you surrender and trust, and they take you, it's been beautiful. So all the Goldilocks Productions, we actually yesterday. August 26th was their 7-year anniversary, and September 1st we start our 8th season. So really excited about that, and so this was put together for everybody else, and I love how that works.
Awesome, beautiful.
That's
thing.
Amazing.
We admire you, Josh, and I. We're trying to do the same thing, and oh boy, we're learning a lot.
You are doing it. You got it.
Yep, and you learn a lot from these experiences. I think it's great for giving people a chance. Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, nothing.
Okay, I thought you were going to say something. I didn't want to cut you off, but yeah. So, Tiffany, thank you so much, and everyone that's watching, please, in the description, if you connect with her or want to reach out, her information is there, along with Goldilocks Productions. Please give her page a subscribe. Very uplifting conversations, very positive. In the extraterrestrial community, there's a lot of negativity and hostile stuff going on. It's really refreshing to go to a place that no matter what interview you watch with her, it's just uplifting and a good time and good vibes, and people just trying to connect to this cosmic source energy in some way or another through their version of their human experience, and putting the pieces together and trying to figure out the bigger picture. No different than what we're doing here. And also, in the descriptions, make sure you check out Josh and I. We have our additional information in there. We have the Order of Light merch store, the membership for the channel. So everyone, you can definitely all check that out. We got a bunch of stickers, badges, all that good stuff, exclusive content. And please check her page out. It's really cool. And definitely make sure that you watch the interview Josh and I did on there. If you have to only watch one video, go there and watch that, and then start to watch the others. And we got to get them over there. That's the point. Get them over there, and then once they see, they'll be hooked, and they'll stay there. So that's what it's all about. And cousin, really appreciate you having on. I could have talked for another 2 hours if I would have just everything you said. Josh and I, we related to so much. We both could have went on a while on each little tiny thing that you said. It really connects with us, and we know it's going to connect to a lot of the people that are watching this. And you know, I'm glad you stayed strong and you didn't let the world disconnect you from what you were already connected to. So thankful for that. And may that be a reminder to all of those that are watching. You come into this world well connected. We are taught to disconnect, and this is how you stay in tune in a world out of tune. So Tiffany, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Much love and light. We will see you next time.
Have a great night, everybody.
Disclosure. Have a wonderful night. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Please join the YouTube membership for my channel. You will get exclusive badges, really awesome emojis, member-only live streams, posts, and chats and connections with me for only $5.99 a month. See you there. Hey everyone, check out the Order of Light merchandise store. We got a lot of different t-shirts there. The Humans Aren't Real, Lower Always Creek Incident. We got tank tops to Merkaba. We got stickers, glasses, a lot of different glasses, so get thirsty. We got bags. I live in New Jersey. We don't have bags anymore, so it's really nice. We got flip-flops, hoodies, and all the ladies out there, we got a bunch of awesome merchandise for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to set a reminder for up-and-coming videos. If you have had an experience, please email us at orderoflight777@gmail.com. If you would like to contact our special guests, information can be found in the description. For additional information, socials, and online store, go to the direct me link in the description. Whistleblowers, experiencers, and contactees of all backgrounds, now is the time to come forward. Please subscribe, share, and give the video a big thumbs up. We are not waiting for the disclosure. We are the disclosure. See you next time.